Welcome to the show, Our Democracy, the Cjr Show. In this show, we will discuss questions of democracy, governance, elections, and other topical issues in Guyana and occurrences in countries around the world. We hope the show will be of interest to everyone. So let's begin the show. Good day. Welcome. Let's remove the banner.
Let me go scroll up on the assets. I'm on assets, you can see it. You can scroll up, you can see hide and show. On your right hand side, after you press assets on your right hand side.
Yeah.
Right.
Welcome to the show, Our Democracy, the Cjr Show. In this show, we will discuss questions of democracy, governance, elections, and other topical issues in Guyana and occurrences in countries around the world. We hope the show will be of interest to everyone. So let's begin the show. Welcome to the show, Our Democracy, the Cjr Show. In this show, we will discuss questions of democracy, governance, elections, and other topical issues in Guyana and occurrences in countries around the world. We hope the show will be of interest to everyone. So let's begin the show.
It's live.
No, I said end stream.
It says end stream.
Hmm.
Don't mind it. Give me your life. Give me your life.
Good day. Welcome to the show, Our Democracy, the Cjr Show. I'm not seeing the text. Text that I have to read from.
Did you open up the email or try to open up the window? Hit your mic. Because if you can hear, hit your mic.
On mute.
Remove. What? No, your banner.
Mm-hmm.
Good. Go to Chrome before.
Go to Chrome now.
Yeah. Everybody can hear you. All right.
Below.
Correct. Everyone can hear you now. Yeah. All right. What do you got on gone? Okay, good. This one.
Sorry, though.
Found. Yes. Found. Now, finish. Just like it. Now, there you go.
Good day. Welcome to another in the series, Our Democracy, the Cjr Show. Unfortunately, we were unable to bring the show last Wednesday, owing to some technical difficulties and the change in our platform. For today's podcast, I will discuss two topics with you. First, I will address the question why violence and free and fair elections are incompatible. And second, welcoming the end of the war between Iran and Israel. Let's dive into the first topic. Why violence and free and fair elections are incompatible. I need to start out by stating that political violence in any shape or form in an election season is unacceptable. It is an unacceptable means to a destructive end and must be avoided at all costs. The end is usually fivefold. First, to weaken the guardrails of democracy, and second, to challenge the election's results. Third, to impose the will of the loser on the winner. Fourth, to create political instability. And fifthly, to harass local businesses. These five dimensions are all anti-democratic and are inextricably linked to what has become a norm-breaking process for the opposition, started by the operatives soon after the 2020 elections, though there have been many occurrences in the past. In an election season, what Guyanese are usually more anxious about is that particular period when the results are announced or are about to be announced. If those results show that the opposition has lost, people will not be surprised by the way the opposition would go about mobilizing its supporters and pushing them to become aggressive, as was the case in 2020 at the Ashman's building. 28 years after, the threat of the use of force in election season by known opposition operatives has not disappeared. Recall that on November 16, 2024, in an address to a public meeting at Maikoni on the East Coast and published by Demerara Waves on November 17, 2024, Mr. Aubrey Norton, the opposition leader, stated, quote, PNC polling agents will block foreigners from voting, end of quote. In response, the Guyana Elections Commission, GCOM, issued a press release emphasizing the following. GCOM, as the constitutional agency that is responsible for the conduct of elections in Guyana, is perturbed at Mr. Norton's mischievous statements that can potentially create fear and harm to eligible voters exercising their constitutional right to vote on elections day. The GCOM release went on to add, it must be noted, however, that elections are managed by the Guyana Elections Commission, and political party agents will have no authority to determine who votes or not. once a person's name is in the official voters list. That means that all the necessary legal and administrative scrutiny were done, and he or she is qualified to be so listed. I should add that once a person's name is listed on the voters list, they are qualified to vote. But GCOM went on to state, quote, consequently, the Elections Commission is urging political stakeholders to be responsible and cautious about their comments in the public domain, as these can potentially have effect on the electoral process and severe consequences, end of quote. In the light of such utterances by the opposition leader, it is vital that Guyanese stand firmly against and oppose any threat of disruption before, during, or after elections 2025. In a democracy, particularly in an election season, protests must have a positive political goal and should not be limited or should not be aimed at hindering the electoral process, neither at the beginning, during, or at the end. In an election season, the driving force should always be those who stand foursquare in defense of democracy and free and fair elections, those who work hard to ensure that the electoral process is free from both intimidation and interference in the electoral process to the extent of subverting the will of the electorate. Lessons can be learned from the years of struggle waged for the restoration of democracy and free and fair elections. Throughout that period, the forces opposed to rigged elections embraced peaceful and nonviolent means to express their dissent and to dislodge in 1992 the authoritarian PNC government. To remove the potential of any form of unrest before, during, or after the impending elections, stakeholders should consider issuing statements and, if at all possible, committing to a common declaration that denounces political violence, calls for respecting the electoral process, the rule of law, and the results of free and fair elections in the country. There is no correlation, therefore, between violence and free and fair elections. The former undermines the fundamental principle of free and fair elections, while the latter allows citizens to express their free will without fear or coercion. A secure and peaceful environment is a prerequisite for holding the upcoming elections, where the Guyanese electorate can cast their ballots without intimidation or threat of violence. It is precisely for this reason that law enforcement bodies in Guyana are allowed by law to vote in advance of civilians, thus freeing them up to provide the secure environment necessary on an election day. In any democratic society, violence in any shape or form, before or after elections day, obstructing the right of electors to cast their vote, or preventing GCOM officials from executing their lawful function should not be tolerated. Disrupting the electoral process at that time is unlawful. Persons engaged in such activity are liable to be charged and put before the court. Political violence on the eve of elections creates an atmosphere of fear and distrust, which can lead to lower voter turnout and a skewed representation of the electorate. When people fear for their safety, they may choose not to vote, effectively silencing their voices, and undermining the legitimacy of the electoral process. Violence can be used to manipulate elections outcomes. That can involve ballot box stuffing, intimidation of voters to vote a certain way, or destruction of ballots. Such actions directly compromise the integrity of the elections result. It is critical, therefore, that all stakeholders be aware that violence before and after election can result in the breakdown of the rule of law and the erosion of democratic institutions. Violence is used to settle political disputes, undermine the legitimacy of the electoral process and the institutions that are meant to uphold it. The situation is one that could become untenable. The presence or threat of violence can deter official observers from being present in Guyana to monitor elections, thus putting paid to a process that is widely expected to be free. Unity and solidarity amongst the democratic, law-abiding forces in Guyana is important if there is to be unified pushback against the anti-democratic and pro-violence elements in our midst. The culture of political violence in our society must not be encouraged nor supported, nor should we be complacent to such actions. All hands must be on deck to prevent such a culture from becoming a normalized feature in our electoral. The second topic I wish to deal with has to do with the ending of the war between Israel and Iran. I am indeed very happy that the war between these two countries has come to an end. In my podcast a few weeks ago, I informed that from reports I received, there was growing fear in countries around the world over the possibility that the United States would enter the war in support of Israel, though there were many countries who were opposed to such a venture. In addition, there was growing concern and unease that the war between the two countries will go on for many years. Well, all know the United States did get involved by bombing the three sites housing nuclear facilities in Iran. This resulted in a horrific escalation of the war between the two countries, with drones and rockets launched from one country to the other, causing massive destruction on both sides, as well as the displacement of ordinary people in both countries. Iran later extended the war beyond Israel, targeting a U.S. military base in Qatar. Fortunately, the base had already been abandoned, resulting in no loss of lives, although Qatar was furious over the attack on its territory by Iran. Finally, the world breathed a sigh of relief when the President of the United States, Donald Trump, announced a cessation of hostilities between Iran and Israel. That cessation of hostilities took a few hours before it became effective and respected by both sides. Not that the war has ended, it is hoped that diplomatic efforts will intensify in the search for a solution to the hostilities between the two countries, more particularly for a lasting peace and solution acceptable to Iran in respect to its right to development of nuclear power for peaceful means. Here in Guyana, the Guyana Peace Council looks forward to an end to the daily onslaught of Palestinians and for the opening up of an era of peace and for the right to life of every Palestinian, as well as respect for their inalienable right to self-determination as enshrined in the Charter of the United Nations. This has brought me to the end of today's program. I do hope you have benefited from what I had to say. First, about why there is need for trust and confidence at this time in the Guyana Elections Commission, and why violence and elections are incompatible. Second, brief commentary welcoming the end of the war between Iran and Israel. Please be advised that I will return to my podcast every Wednesday at 5, not at 3:30. Podcast will continue as usual on Saturday at 5 p.m. Look forward to meeting with you once again next Wednesday, 2025 at 5 o'clock. Please do not forget to press the like, share button, and subscribe to the Cjr Show. Welcome and encourage you to share your views with me on the topics I discuss or any other topic that you may have in mind. Goodbye.